It could be the end of the goalie hug as we know it, and I don't really feel fine.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, May 31st. Where has the month gone? And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Today on the pod, we're going to be looking at the Bruins goaltending situation as we continue our core reviews. Got to look at the recent history, which has been pretty amazing for the Bruins, Swayman and Ullmark this past season, and what the future may hold for this outstanding tandem. Before we get to that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Jeremy Swayman, Linus Ullmark, arguably the best tandem in the NHL at the goaltender position, and it's quite possible that their goaltending relationship may come to an end this summer as the Bruins explore trade options for Ullmark, who is entering the final year of his contract, which will pay him $5 million against the cap this season. We're going to talk about why they might explore that. Well, we know that they are going to, but why they will. And also take a look at their season in review. But first, we have to take a quick look back at the recent Bruins goaltending history and just how ridiculously blessed we've been with stellar star players at this position. Now, the beginning of the century did not get off to a fantastic start. You had guys like Byron Dafoe, John Graham in the net, and among goalies with at least 50 appearances for the Bruins this century, they rank 8th and 9th in terms of save percentage, respectively. 902 for Dafoe, Lord Byron, with a 70, 56, and 20 record. That was back when ties were still a thing. John Graham with an 899 save percentage. Things started to get a little better with the dawn of the Andrew Raycroft era, a 908 save percentage in 108 appearances for the Bruins, good enough to win the Calder Trophy and convince the Toronto Maple Leafs to deal a promising prospect in Tuukka Rask for Andrew Raycroft, and that ended up paying off so big for the Bruins, which we'll get to here in a moment. Now, there's some backups who had been signed that provided solid value for the Bruins. Anton Khudobin, 62 appearances for the Bruins, a 914 save percentage. You have Yaroslav Halak, who played second fiddle to Rask for a few seasons with a 918 save percentage. And then we start to get into the heavy hitters. And let's not forget some of the other guys who played goal for the Bruins. Malcolm Subban, a first-round pick, only played 2 games for the Bruins, a 727 save percentage. Didn't really get a fair shake, let's be honest. Other names that pop out this century, Marty Turco with a 5-game stint. Dan Vladar, of course, before heading off to the Calgary Flames. Jeff Hackett, Hannu Toivonen. Remember him? He had a promising future, we thought. Felix Potvin, Jonas Gustafsson, Joey McDonald, Alex Auld with a quick stint, Nicholas Svedberg, Keith Kincaid has the best save percentage for the Bruins in this century. Only appeared in 1 game, but he had a 30 save appearance, a 968 save percentage. But Chad Johnson up there as well, if you can believe it. But if we're looking at the core goalies for the Bruins this century. Obviously, there are four that you have to look at. These guys have played in big-time situations for the Boston Bruins and have been the core at this position for some years. Now, of course, we had the tandem of Swayman and Ullmark. Prior to that, we were blessed to have the tandem of Tim Thomas and Tuukka Rask. Don't forget, in 2011, when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup, it was Tuukka Rask who had been the goaltender of record the year before. He was expected to take over the net prior to the 2009-2010 series. Tim Thomas got hot at the right time. Those two guys, 921 save percentages for the Boston Bruins. Rask with 564 appearances, Tim Thomas with 378. Both fantastic goaltenders for the Boston Bruins in their time with the team, and really set the standard moving forward for what a Bruins goalie should bring to the table. Tim Thomas won 2 Vezina trophies, one in 2009, one in 2011, and then Tuukka Rask won in 2014. The Bruins so blessed to have that tandem for so long, and Thomas, of course, was the goalie of record in the 2011 Cup run, winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. Rask would have won in 2019 if the Bruins had won Game 7, and it was a candidate as well in 2013. Don't forget, in conference finals, he went 8-0, which is pretty remarkable. That brings us to Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. Ullmark has played 130 games for the Bruins, a .924 save percentage, 126 wins. Jeremy Swayman, 132 appearances, 125 wins, a .919 save percentage for the Boston Bruins. Just remarkable stats. Now, there's only one goalie who's played 100 games for the Bruins in the playoffs. Tuukka Rask, a record of 57-46 with a .925 save percentage. This is a Tuukka Rask slander-free podcast. We have no time for Tuukka slander on this podcast. Of course, Tim Thomas in the playoffs, he had a .933 save percentage in 50 appearances. Just remarkable. Jeremy Swayman, a .922 save percentage in 20 career playoff appearances for the Bruins. Linus Ullmark, 10 appearances, 3-6 record with an .887 save percentage. And that playoff record and what transpired in the postseason this year may be what prompts Don Sweeney to pick up the phone, answer some calls, and we'll discuss that here coming up on the podcast. But to sum up this first segment, the Bruins have been ridiculously blessed with top quality goaltending over the past 20 years or so, and that is well due to goalie coach Bob Essensa. He deserves a lot of credit for how he has developed and maintained and guided the Bruins goaltenders from Tuukka Rask, even Andrew Raycroft, leading into Tuukka Rask, Tim Thomas era, Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman, some backups who have come in and played well as well in the Halak, Hudobin, those kind of guys. But as it stands, Ullmark and Swayman remain the goaltending tandem of record for the Bruins, and we'll discuss their season in review here as the podcast continues. The NBA final is set, and if you are looking for tickets to a Celtics Mavericks game, there's no better place than Game Time. They make getting NBA Finals tickets faster and easier than anybody else. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a low price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I love this view from your seat. You can get a panoramic view so you know exactly what to expect. And their lowest price guarantee says Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same ticket for less on a different platform. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time, last minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. And while you're on YouTube, check out the Locked On Sports Today channel. All the latest news, opinions, analysis from across the Locked On universe. And also available for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Now, Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, of course, won the Jennings Trophy last season as the top tandem in the NHL. Linus Ullmark joined Rask and Thomas as Vezina Trophy winners. And Ullmark's 2022-23 is his save percentage of .938 is tied with Tim Thomas in 2011 for the best season for the Bruins in the 21st century. Thomas also had a .933 save percentage in 2009 en route to another Vezina. And then you had Rask in 2010, 2014, 2013, 2020, 2015. And rounding out the top 10 seasons for the Bruins, save for Andrew Raycroft's .926 in 2004, which earned him the Vezina Trophy. And again, caught the attention. Or sorry, not the Vezina, but the Calder. Or maybe the Calder was in, that must have been that season. And catching the attention of the Toronto Maple Leafs as he was later traded for the rights to Tuukka Rask, and that was a very shrewd move looking back on things. Now, Jeremy Swayman, you have to go down to 13th to get the top save percentage among goalies who have played 30 games this century. A .920 save percentage last season in 2023-24, a mark of .916. And let's be honest, down the stretch, it was Linus Ullmark who played better than Jeremy Swayman. Swayman did not have a great performance from like the trade deadline on, but he did pick things up heading into the postseason, and that's where we got kind of that really fantastic run from Swayman. Ullmark took a seat, but looking at their regular seasons, 44 games for Swayman, 43, 25, and 10 record, a .916 save percentage. Ullmark, 40 games played, 22, 10, and 7 with a .915 save percentage. And over the course of the 3 seasons that they have played together, Ullmark has been the better goalie, but with a .924 save percentage versus .919 for Jeremy Swayman, 130 games versus 132 for Swayman. Swayman does have fewer wins as well. Ullmark has been the better goalie, but he is the older player, and it's clear that the Bruins have tabbed Jeremy Swayman as the guy moving forward. Now, in an ideal world, the Bruins would be able to keep both of these guys. But unfortunately, with Jeremy Swayman being due a new contract and Linus Ullmark in the final year of his deal coming up, and perhaps that salary cap space being moved elsewhere, that's where we get the pending likely decision that he will be at least sought after and a trade will be explored for him. Now, obviously, we need to talk about the playoffs. Like I said, the regular season, it was Ullmark who, well, they almost had identical save percentages, 916 for Swayman, 915 for 916 for Swayman, 915 for Ullmark. Ullmark played better down the stretch, but ultimately it was Swayman who was tabbed as the starter in the postseason. And that's where Ullmark has really struggled for the Boston Bruins. As great as he has been in the regular season, his playoff numbers, not fantastic. He had 2 starts in 2022 for the Bruins, an 860 save percentage. He had 6 starts last season, 896 save percentage. 1 start this season, came in relief once as well, an 886 save percentage for Linus Ullmark. And Jeremy Swayman just flat out played so much better. And he was one of, if not the sole reason, I don't want to say the sole reason, but probably the biggest reason why the Bruins pushed the Florida Panthers to Game 6, almost to a Game 7. He did have a 6-6 record, but a 933 save percentage. And looking back at last season, you could argue that, hey, maybe if they went to Swayman earlier on against the Panthers, they could have salvaged that historic season and moved on further in the postseason. As it stands, they didn't go to him until Game 7. And by then, I mean, they could have won that game. It wasn't on him, but they should have locked it down when they had that 3-1 series lead. They rotated between the 2 goalies to begin the playoffs this year. Ullmark played well against the Maple Leafs in the game that he lost, but then came in relief against the Panthers, allowed 2 goals on 10 shots. Did have a 912 save percentage in the game against the Leafs. And that's how it goes. Swayman gave the team the best chance to win. Not to say that Ullmark couldn't have if afforded that opportunity, but they went with Swayman. He ran with it, and now they have the decision to make as to whether they should deal Linus Ullmark, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Have we seen the last of the Boston Bruins goalie hug? Well, it's quite possible because Don Sweeney said so. He said so at his end of season media availability that he was going to be taking calls. He was going to be making calls. Linus Ullmark, no doubt, will be a highly sought after goaltender, partly because his cap hit is fairly reasonable. $5 million for 2024-25, after which he will be an unrestricted free agent. And he's also been, like I said, lights out for the Bruins in the regular season at the very least. You put that with the fact that Jeremy Swayman is a restricted free agent. I've seen some projections or predictions estimating his next deal at anywhere from 6, 7, 8, even 8.5 million per season. You don't want to pay $13.5 million for your goaltending tandem. That's just, the Bruins have had a luxury and perhaps they can no longer afford it. So you re-sign Swayman, look to see what the market is. If they can get Swayman at a more reasonable rate and keep the tandem together for one more season, that would be ideal. But they don't have a first, second, or third round pick this year. I'm sure Don Sweeney would love to get into that third round, second round, ideally the first round as well. You also don't have a second next year. So 2 picks in the first 3 rounds of the next 2 drafts, not ideal. You want to be getting some picks. I've seen people suggest they could get like star players in return. Ideally, you're looking for some high draft picks that you can use, a first this year, maybe a second next year. That would be ideal. So that's probably what we're looking for in return for Linus Ullmark. Don't forget, he is 30 years old. Not exactly, an Alexander Georgiev who's going to come in and run with the job for several years to come, per se. And he will have to be re-signed after this coming season. He's played very well in this contract. That will be the acquiring team's responsibility to pay him for what he did with the Boston Bruins. So that might scare some teams off as well. He also has a modified no trade clause, 15-team no trade list, which leaves, the Bruins, 16 teams that he can be traded to around the NHL. Now, the Bruins would have to decide if they want to promote Brendan Bussy. I can't remember how to say it. He's 25 years old, played very well in Providence. 922 save percentage this season in 913 save percentage in 41 appearances. 924 save percentage in 32 appearances last season. 922 save percentage in the playoffs for the Providence Bruins. He could very well earn a look, or they decide to go with a veteran player who can be perhaps acquired more cheaply at the goaltender position. There are some options that will be unrestricted free agents. Ilya Samsonov. Who else is up there? Guys that actually won games this season. Cam Talbot, he only made $1 million this past season. He could be a good veteran to bring in. Alex Nedeljkovic played pretty well for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's only 28. Anthony Stolarz played well for the Panthers. Antti Ranta, perhaps, although he was waived last season. There are some options out there that could be an upgrade over what they already have in the organization, or they just run with Bussy, even though he's a restricted free agent as well, and will need to, ideally, you sign him to a minimum, and then you see what he can do backing up Jeremy Swayman with a much heavier workload. Do I expect Linus Ullmark to be traded? I kind of do. It will be very sad. I will miss him. He seems like a great guy off the ice. He's been a fantastic teammate. He signed for 4 years and probably deserves to play out that contract with the Bruins. But Swayman has just emerged as a go-to guy, and he needs to be paid as such. And they could use that cap space elsewhere to sign what they really missed in the playoffs, which was a scoring winger, a playmaking center, maybe some help on defense. That's where they need. And again, if you have that tandem, $5 million sitting on the bench in the playoffs when you could have that allocated to a skater, it just makes sense to do so. Keep an eye on that. The goalie hug likely over. I'll miss it. I'm sure it will go on. I'm sure Swayman won't not hug whoever is in the net with him, but it won't be the same because they do have a special relationship. Anyways, that's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for taking some time to hang out. We'll be back on Monday to continue our core player reviews. We're going to look at Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha, bring you all the latest on the black and gold, any breaking news. Be sure to jump on the YouTube channel. I'll have immediate reaction there. Please subscribe to the podcast on audio and video if you haven't already. And have yourselves a fantastic weekend, friends. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you again on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.